Hi everyone and welcome back to the channel. My name is Ben Robitaille. I am a realtor with Royal LePage InTouch Realty in Midland, Ontario. And we're here with the March 2023 market update for Simcoe County. Now, the biggest market update is I'm off of it. I'm sorry, that was a terrible joke. My wife made me say it. We're off to a great start. So let's jump into it right away. Let's kick things off with Midland. So in Midland, we saw an average sale price of $562,000 for February. This has gone up a fair amount from January. But if we look at the number of sales have decreased, which is a little surprising, from 13 to 10. So fairly small sample size. If we look at the number of new listings, stayed pretty much the same at 32. Going to 32 again in February. And days on market has increased slightly in February, going from 14 in January to 20 in February. Moving on to Penetang. If you look at the average sale price for February, dropped fairly dramatically from $600,000 in January to $503 in February, but the number of sales in Penetang is typically fairly small. We saw a slight increase from 1 to 4 sales. So it's hard to extrapolate anything from the average sale price here because the sample size is just way too small. The number of new listings did increase a little bit, which is good, from 11 in January to 12 in February. And the number of days on market has increased drastically, going from 45 to 85 in February. Next, let's look at Tiny Township. Now, once again here, sample size does vary quite a bit from month to month, but our average sale price did drop in February from $1.1 million in January to $963,000 in February. And the number of sales went from 7 in January to 10 in February. So once again, very small sample size, but we'll put that all in perspective when we zoom out and look at Simcoe County as a whole. If we look at the number of new listings, decreased slightly from 32 to 31 in February, and the average days on market dropped from 70 to 62 in February. Next up, Tay Township. So Tay Township saw a slight decrease in the average sale price, going from $564 in January down to $513 in February. The number of sales stayed the same, going from 8 in January to 8 in February. The number of new listings increased slightly, going from 14 in January to 20 in February, which is a good thing. We don't have a lot of supply, so we need some more inventory out there on the market. And your average days on market has dropped quite significantly, going from 72 to 37. So these days on markets have been all over the place for all these different communities. If we want a more generalized view of how long it's taking a home on average to sell, I think it will be important to look at Simcoe County's data as a whole at the end of this video when we zoom out and we have a larger sample size. Next, let's look at Oro-Medonte. So Oro saw a slight decrease in their average sale price, going from just under $1.1 million in January to $986,000 in February. Once again, the number of sales here is usually quite small, so we went from 10 in January to 13 in February. The number of new listings has gone up, which is good to see, going from 19 in January to 38 in February. So this is a fairly big increase for this area. And the days on market on average dropped from 49 to 31. Next, let's look at Severn. So Severn in January saw an average sale price of $966,000, dropping in February to $819,000. The number of sales, once again typically small here, went from 6 to 7. Number of new listings in Severn went from 11 in January to 18 in February. And the days on market here increased, going from 28 to 41. Now I'm predicting as we get into the spring market, days on market all over the place is going to start to decrease a little bit more, as we typically see more activity, and I think this is going to come in the form of buyers. Next, let's take a look at Orillia. So Orillia in January saw an average sale price of $637,000, dropping slightly to $617,000 in February. usually a larger sample size in Orillia, so we saw an increase in sales from 23 to 29 in February. So this is a bit of a larger scale picture compared to the communities we just covered. Number of new listings dropped slightly, going from 68 in January down to 44 in February, but the days on market also decreased, going from 40 in January to 38 in February. Next, let's look at Barrie. So Barrie saw a slight increase in February, going from 722,000 on average in January to 733,000 in February. Number of sales also increased slightly, going from 92 in January to 129 in February. The number of new listings in Barrie also increased, going from 213 in January to 235 in February. And the days on market on average dropped significantly from 37 days in January to 25 in February. Next, looking at Springwater, we saw a decrease in the average sale price, going from 1.18 in January down to 977 in February. Now, Springwater usually has few sales, so sales went from 16 to 15 in February. The number of new listings on the market here increased fairly dramatically, going from 35 in January to 46 in February, and the average amount of time it'll take to sell your home in Springwater dropped from 43 to 33 days. Next, let's look at Wasaga Beach. So Wasaga Beach in January saw an average sale price of $756,000, dropping to $699 in February. The number of sales in Wasaga remained fairly consistent, going from 18 in January to 21 in February. The number of new listings also increased slightly, going from 71 in January to 81 in February. The average amount of time it takes to sell a home in Wasaga Beach went from 33 days in January to 46 days in February. Collingwood in January saw an average sale price of $894, and that dropped to $793 in February. Now that's a fairly significant drop, so let's look at the number of sales, which actually increased slightly, going from 24 to 34. Now, even though we're up in the 20s, 30s here, it's still not a large enough sample size to really give us a clear idea with average sale price of what's going on in the market. It could be that month, lower priced homes happen to sell more versus your high-end homes. Sometimes you get one high-end sale, a $2-3 million listing sells, and that skews your average sale price for the whole month. So it's important to take all of these with a grain of salt. The number of new listings in Collingwood decreased in February, going from 74 in January down to 58 in February. And the average time it takes to sell a home in Collingwood dropped from 64 in January to 51 in February. Finally, let's zoom out and take a look at Simcoe County as a whole to get a wider view of what's going on in the area for real estate. So the average sale price in Simcoe County dropped from $817 in January down to $763 in February. That's a fairly significant drop. I know RBC is predicting that the market is going to bottom out in spring, and they posted an article about it this week, which I'll cover in a video next week, and I'll link somewhere around here to it if you want to check that out. But I don't think the bottom out is going to be these amazing real estate deals all over the province. I think because inventory is still so low, you're not going to see prices drop a whole heck of a lot. So whether you buy now or you buy a month from now, 2 months from now, I don't think it's going to make a huge difference. So if you're trying to time the market properly, I would stop waiting and start actively looking. The number of sales in Simcoe County increased slightly in February, going from 290 to 370, a fairly significant increase. The number of new listings also rose slightly, but not nearly as much as the number of sales, so going from 779 to 810. Now the average days on market is also coming down, going from 43 in January to 34 in February. So I think these are all early signs that the market's really starting to pick up for spring. If you have any questions at all, feel free to reach out to me through my website posted down below. If you have an opinion on the real estate market, I would love to hear about it. Leave a comment down below and I'll be sure to get back to every single one of them. And if you like this video, hit the thumbs up button. And if you really liked it, consider subscribing. We'd love to have you around. Well, that's all for this week. Thanks, and see you in the next one.